one of two things. You want short answers and short answer choices, and you want line numbers. Answer choices with a lot of words and answers and passages that have really big paragraphs are going to be ones you want to avoid as much as possible. So the same with the science section. First thing you do is you go through, you find your most difficult section in there, and letter of the day it. So now you have 40 minutes to go through you have 35 minutes to go through 30 questions instead of 35 minutes to go through 40 questions. So that gives you a little more time per question. So go ahead to 372. It usually isn't the case where kids are like, oh, reading's my worst subject. It's always math or English. But the same thing is with math. We want to avoid any major blowouts, right? So if we're shooting for our 20, for 20 to be our low score, and we look at that table in the middle of 372, we can see that a score of 20 equivalates to 20 or 21 questions right out of 40, right? So we're shooting for the 50% mark for them to get it right. So if you think about it, yeah. If you think about it, with the reading section and with the math section, it aligns up pretty evenly with the STAR scores that we're expecting the kids to get in their freshman year. So if you think about freshman year, they got to get a 53 or 54 to pass on English, and they got to get a 35 to pass on math. So to get these 20 scores of 20, or right around 20, you got to get about the same percentages. So for math, it's going to be about 35% you got to get right to get your 20. And with reading, it's about 50% that you have to get 20, okay? So realistically, content-wise, you can know about half of what you're supposed to know in high school and still get the score you need to get into college. Now, if you don't know that content, you got to be better at testing strategies, but you don't have to know everything you want to get into the school that you want to get to, assuming it's not a reach for you. But that being said, it is time to get into the fundamentals of reading on the ACT. Now, these reading strategies also work perfectly for the TSI. So when you're doing reading prep during these boot camps, if you focus on just the ACT strategies, that's fine, because it works for both of them. It works for almost any reading test except for an AP test where it's way longer. So first thing you do is you look and see about the little blurb. Is this going to be humanities? Is this going to be natural science? Is this going to be prose? What's it going to be? As soon as you figure that, you go and you look at your questions. And there are a couple types of questions in particular we're going to look for. And then once you have labeled your questions and worked through them, then it's time to go back and work the passage and find your answers. So go ahead and turn to 374. At the beginning of each section on the reading test, you have a blurb that tells you something. So for example, the natural science one. This passage is adapted from an article by Herman Forrest on the 4 forces that exist in nature. So you have no idea what you're going to be reading about. And like with this one, it's all about gravity and motion and stuff like that. So it can be complicated, but they're talking about your comprehension as opposed to the scientific stuff in it. Now, my goal for my kids is that they answer every single STAR question that they see on the test correctly. So if you look at questions 31 through 40, go through on each one that gives you a specific line reference or tells you exactly where to look and put a star next to it. Which ones did you star, D?
32, 33, 35, 37, 38, 40. And then I put a question mark by 32.
What'd you do 32 for? Oh, how the passage?
No, when it talks about two electrons floating near each other. But
Is there a
it's
specific
not-
line reference
No,
though?
I was going to say that's not a specific reference.
33, where it says according to the passage. The ones that say according to the passage, based on the passage, after having read the passage, they're referring to the whole thing, so it's not a specific one, so we don't star it. Yep. So we should have one on 35 in line 55. Number 37, lines 59 to 63. 38, and question number 40. Right? Now, if you think about it, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 questions out of 10 right here that tell you exactly where to look and exactly what to look for, right? The rule of thumb is star questions, one before, one after. So one line before it, one line after. If that doesn't provide you the clarity that you need, 2 lines before, 2 lines after. So now you're reading, if you do the 2 before, 2 after, you're reading 4 or 5 lines per question, right? And you can read four lines in about 20 or 30 seconds right there. So if you go through and only answer all the star questions on each of the sections, each of the 4, you're looking between 16 and 20 questions overall. So to get that score of 20 that you want to get, you already have them telling you exactly where to look and what to look for almost half the questions on your test, right? If they were to get 75% of their star questions right, where they tell you where to look, they only have to get another 7 questions right out of the whole reading test in order to get that 20 or 21 that they want, okay? On the questions that don't have your stars, so we got 32, 33, 34, 36, and 39. What you want to go do is go through and look for specific keywords that are going to stand out from other words in the passage. 31, one main point the author formulates. There's nothing you can do about that. You either read the whole thing to learn about the author's points or not. 32, however, if you look, 2 electrons floating near each other in outer space, somewhere you're going to see electrons floating in outer space. You're going to see that somewhere in the passage, right? So we're going to underline 2 electrons floating and then outer space.
You have to follow directions too, because when you gave instructions, I was listening at the bell, so I heard keywords that we were talking about before, and I said, well, maybe you said something about some line, and I saw all of that stuff.
So 33, what are our keywords going to be in 33? Bingo. 34, Mayberry? Oh, that's fine. I'll come back to you. Marcellus? Stars and galaxies. Wonderful. 36, Spencer? Weak nuclear force, right? And then 39 is not answered by the passage, right? So we've gone through, and other than 31 and 39, we know exactly what we're looking for or where we're looking for it, right? The goal is that you should be able to go through each of these questions, mark them like this, and be ready to move on to the passage within 2 to 3 minutes, okay? And when you sit down and you look at it, and you actually do it, 2 to 3 minutes is actually a really long time to go through and look at 10 questions, all right? Go ahead and turn the page. Yeah. So here is my number 1 strategy when it comes to doing this. Even being an English teacher, when I take the ACT, I have a difficult time getting through all 40 questions in 35 minutes because it's a lot, and there are some complicated questions within there. When we teach kids to write, we teach them to write where they give a topic sentence, they give their details, then they transition to the next one, topic sentence, details, transition to the next one, right? So theoretically, the topic sentence tells you exactly what's going to be in the paragraph, right? And then the paragraph just gives you your supporting details. If you write like that in the normal world, which most people do, when it comes to published writing, your topic sentences are all you really need to focus on, right? If you read the first sentence of each paragraph, and just the first sentence, you will get a very good understanding of what a piece of writing is about to be about. Now, in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got 10 paragraphs. So that means we got 10 sentences to read. And that, if you look at it, if you're looking for something like where question 36 is talking about weak nuclear force, right? If you look at the first paragraph, the universe is home to an incredible array of objects and phenomena. Okay, probably not going to be in there. At the smallest scale in nature, there are strong and weak nuclear forces. It's probably going to be somewhere around there, right? And then we look, 10, weak nuclear force is also a short-range force. So now we know exactly where to look for one of our questions. So we can say, well, we saw weak nuclear force twice in 2 paragraphs. It's probably going to be somewhere in between these 2 small paragraphs so we can find that key word, right? But beyond that, the electric interaction between charged particles and the magnetic interaction between magnets or current-carrying wires are really different aspects of the same force. So if we had one that talked about anything with magneticism, that would probably be in there. Fourth force is gravity. Gravity is a long-range force. So we went from weak nuclear force to gravity. Everything we know about dates back to the brilliant pioneering work of Sir Isaac Newton. So somewhere in there is going to be Newton. Shortly after the turn of the 20th century, Albert Einstein, a young German physicist with a deep personal conviction, re-examined Newtonian gravity and did not like what he saw. So something with Einstein is probably going to be in there. The general theory of relativity is a theory of gravity. Okay. And after formulating his theory of relativity, Einstein naturally wanted to see whether it predicted the right answers. Right? So by reading that, we know, okay, they're going to be talking about nuclear forces, they're going to be talking about gravity, they're going to be talking about Newton and Einstein. All right? And then based on the last one, it's going to be Einstein challenging what went on with Newton. All this has been done within 4 minutes, and we have located 2 of our things. We located Sir Newton, we located Einstein, we located weak nuclear force. So now we just went from 4 to 7 questions where we know exactly where everything is. So within a span of 5 minutes, we've already isolated 7 questions that we can answer within a short period of time, right? And that's not doing anything with one of the main points, and which is not answered by the passage. So the idea of whether a kid can get through this in 10 minutes with this method, they definitely can. But just like math, where you have certain structures, they have those same things here in reading, and it's a matter of getting used to them and practicing with them. Okay, now, while you're working the questions, it's super important to understand exactly what they're asking. So on page 377, the page on the right, we're going to take a look at question number 37, right? Information in the 9th paragraph, lines 59 to 63, indicates that Einstein differed with Newton in that Einstein. So what's the question asking? How is Einstein different from Newton, right? And here it says read a window of 5 to 10 lines. In this, you are going to read 59 to 63 is 4 lines, so you're going to read 5, 6. You're going to read about 6 lines total. So we're going to read from line 58 to 64. So go ahead and do that now. 58 to 64. Mm-hmm. Now, where in there do we see, what line specifically does it talk about Einstein's theory being different than Newton's? So we're looking at line 1661. And then what exactly, so what words do they say in line 1661?
He doesn't treat gravity as a force.
So we have gravity and force, right? Those are our keys. So when we look at our answers, where we say work the answers, the key thing to remember is, do they say that in the text? Do they say anything about gravity being insignificant in the formation of the universe? Does the universe ever mention the formation? No, so we can't have that. Do we ever talk about Mercury? No. Thought that gravity should not be treated as a force? Yes. Did he say that anything about Newton and precession? No. So you can see, a lot of times your process of elimination within the reading section is going to focus specifically on, is that written in the text? Is that not written in the text? Is it explicitly mentioned or is it not explicitly mentioned? Let's take a look at the next page. Now, the questions that focus on overall, so like 33, according to the passage, Newton's law of gravitation was used to calculate successfully. This is where, after you've read your first sentences, if you want to go back and focus on questions like this, if you feel as though you do well with the science section, you want to do the longer questions on that, that's fine. So then you go back and you have to learn to see, where do I see something about Newton's law of gravitation? So that's when you go through and you're scanning to see if you can find those keywords. So in this case, if we look at question number 33, it's asking, according to the passage, Newton's law of gravitation was used to calculate successfully. So they're asking you, what was it used to calculate? So we're looking for calculate, Newton, and law of gravitation. So we're going to scan to see if we can find those three words. Okay, so we found Newton in 45. And then following down a couple lines of that, what word do we see in line 48? Calculate. Is that in the question? And what is it calculating? Orbits of planets and satellites. Do we see that in any of our answer choices? B. Now, here it's a little different because the questions are split from the passages. Usually the questions are on the right-hand side, the passages are on the left. They use words straight from the text in a lot of the answer choices. And anytime you see words straight from the text in the answer choices, it's generally going to be your correct answer when it comes to the ACT test. Sometimes there are questions where they want you to give the best answer, as opposed to where they give you multiple answers that could be right, but they want you to pick the best one. They kind of get you to fish a little bit a lot of times, but when they do, it's always based on the text. So for example, with question number 35, it says, when the author states in line 55 that Einstein did not like what he saw, the author most nearly means. Well, in order to understand that, you have to know exactly what he's talking about. So if we go back to the lines 53 to 59 and read that. Yeah, so when we look at it, we're going to be focusing on, they give us a specific window to look at, right? We have 53 to 59, we have that one paragraph. So when we're looking there, we're saying what is written in that paragraph and what is in the questions. So if you look at it, they don't say anything about fundamentally weak. There's no mention of planets or satellites, and there's no mention of electromagnetic force. So if they don't talk about those three things in the paragraph, then that leaves only one answer that they did talk about, which was B, when they talked about the location or state of motion. So without even knowing what the author is trying to mean or anything like that, we can look at what is wrong, what is not there, in order to find out what's right. And that's super, super helpful when it comes to this. And kids ask, well, I'm not sure why it's that. Did they write exactly those words in there? No. Well, then it's not right. And another thing.
When it's really saying, it makes you feel like you need to infer something or say something that's not there.
When in reality, they're just saying, is this mentioned or is it not mentioned? Another important thing to understand about this method with the star questions and the 2 before, 2 after, when you solve your star questions where they tell you exactly where to look, and you're reading those little 4-line segments, 5-line segments, 2-line segments, you're getting bits and pieces of that story. So you've already read the first line of each paragraph, so you have a general idea. Then when you do your star questions, it's giving you those chunks from the middle of the paragraphs. So by the time it comes for you to answer those 3 leftover questions, you've already dealt with almost all the passage in a much, much shorter amount of time in a much more efficient way, where you're going back and looking exactly what you need instead of reading and guessing what's going to be important. This one's hard to do with kids because they sit there and say, I can just read it and I'll get it. When in reality, they do the same thing where, like that question we just looked at. Is he really saying that? Well, I remember them talking about planets and satellites. That was the answer to the other question, 33, so it should be C. And that's what kids do all the time. And that's what the ACT is trying to get kids to do. But if we look at page 380, anytime you see suggests, infers, implies, means, these are all reasoning questions, right? Everyone go back and read the last paragraph. Now, if you were to sum up that last paragraph in your own words, what does it do? What's the purpose of that last paragraph?
Comparing and contrasting.
And what does it say when they're comparing? What's their verdict that they reach?
That the 2 theories are pretty much the same, but Einstein is more accurate.
More accurate, right? If we look at our answer choices, do any of them talk about being more accurate? J's pretty close to being more accurate, right? Explain more than Newton's. And if you think about it, he was sitting there saying Newton wasn't wrong, but Einstein just explained a little bit more. All right? So sometimes your answer choices will pop off the page at you like that one. But other times you can look at it and say, well, what does it suggest? Einstein's theory took many years. Did they talk about time in there? No mention of time, so it can't be F. doesn't talk about Einstein and Newton as people, so it can't be G.
Wait. Why can't it be G?
It says the similarities between Einstein and Newton are very strong.
Not their theory.
Their theories are very similar, but the people themselves are not. Well, it's not mentioned. General relativity explained more than was ever intended. They don't say anything about it. So once again, it comes back to what is exactly written within the text. And let's take a look at vocabulary and context, right? This is a skill that students develop over years and years, and English teachers just kind of hammering it at them all the time of, you got to use your context clues. What's going on in the context? And figure it out that way. This is one. Word roots and prefixes really help. Using your context clues really help, but this is a skill that kids either have or they don't really have. You can develop it with practice, but it's not necessarily something that you can really hammer into them within like 2 days. One of the strategies that they like to do is looking at your accept and not questions, or the least correct answer questions, and having you do them opposite, where you say which one of these works, and then if you find the 3 that works and the one that doesn't is the correct answer. I find that tends to confuse kids. Just make sure anytime you have a not, accept, least, any of those questions, that they giant circle, giant underline, giant box, just something that will show to them that this is what they're looking for. They're not looking for you to answer the question. They're looking for one that doesn't work. And again, these 3 questions, 36, 34, and 32, are the ones that take more time. So you gotta think about whether that makes sense for you to use that amount of time on it or not.
I'd like to know the best answer for 38.
38? Absolutely. G, abnormal, yeah. So an anomaly is something that is unexpected or kind of stands out. Abnormal is something that's odd or different. So besides the context also helps you with that, but abnormal is going to be your best answer in this case.
Am I looking at the right thing? One decisively was proved correct.
Your book is,
Perhaps.
Yeah, that's probably it.
is used in a lot of people too, the phrase emerge trying to keep most things
I said F or G. I said F or G. I couldn't. I'm thinking maybe G.
Zachariah's grandma had a grandparent. He was thinking whoops.
You said G.
It's looking like G's right. Oh, it's proved correct. Yeah, so G. Yeah, y'all have a different one in your book than I do. I have abnormal and anomalous in mine. Okay, so what I need you to do, I need you to turn to page 384. Yeah. The first thing I need you to do, I need you to go through questions 1 through 10. I need you to mark the questions. You're going to put a star next to the questions that give you specific line references. Do you have the one about the farm on there? Is that what your passage is about?
Social science, the flu, the 1918 flu and its afterlife.
Go to page 401 in your books. Yeah, see, I wrote myself a note. 401.
I swear I didn't understand the first set of instructions. Were you telling us to go through the question?
Yeah, we're going to work through the questions on it. So we're on 401. Now you guys are on the one about the farm, right?
No. Golden thread.
There's 2 questions on our 401.
402. The woods were already filled with shadows? Okay.
Hey, y'all find it on?
402. Now, what do you notice about the second paragraph in this? Do we notice anything about it? Yeah,
It's real long.
it's kind of long. It goes from line 10 all the way to line 45. So we have a 35-line paragraph.
You read every 5th sentence in order to know what paragraph you got.
Pretty much you're going to read about 3 or 4 sentences throughout the course of that. Just kind of pick them out and see what's going on in there. But what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to look at questions 1 through 10 that relate to this passage. And I'd like you to go through and mark the questions that are star questions, the ones with line references. And the ones that do not have it, I would like you to underline the key words in it.
Stars for line questions and keywords. The keywords are the words that actually might appear in the passage.
Ones that'll stand out from others.
Let me put my glasses on. When I do, can you say that?
I cannot see.
They can't hear. She doesn't
So,
have glasses on.
You're looking at questions 1 through 10 on page 403. The questions that have specific line references, you're going to put a star next to. And the questions that do not have specific line references, you're going to underline the key words that would stand out from others within the text.
What are you trying to tell me right now? I'm trying to what? Well, I guess you are correct.
Are we answering too?
Just going through and marking it. Okay, so which questions do we have stars next to? What's one you have a star next to, Mayberry? 3? Outlaw?
6.
6. Marcellus? 5. D? 7. Spencer? God, you guys are awesome. Okay. Number 10 is going to be one of the ones. The first thing you do is you'd circle not, right? Because it's one of the not questions. But 10 is one of the questions you would leave for later on, once you've gone through and done the star questions, and then you found your keywords, because it's going to give you, you'll have more of an idea about the passage. And at that point, you can narrow it down. Because anytime you can narrow anything down, you automatically have an advantage on the question. So in this case, you're going to when you get to 10, you'll already have a decent idea because it's going to, with the 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you already got 5 of your questions telling you where to look. Now, in question number, which is the one? They give you one where it's like the whole paragraph. Yeah, question number 8, all right? 8's a star question, but look at the lines they give you, right? It gives you 9 to 45, so it's giving you that entire giant second paragraph, right? Now, with prose, it's a little different than with expository writing or persuasive writing because you don't necessarily have to have the main ideas in your topic sentence in prose. So if you were to go through and read the first sentences, the woods were already filled with shadows one June evening just before 8 o'clock, through a bright sunset still glimmering faintly among the trunks of the trees. Okay, so you got a setting. There's hardly a night during the summer when the old cow could be found waiting in the pasture bars. On the contrary, it was her greatest pleasure to hide herself away among the high huckleberry bushes. And though she wore loud bells, she had made the discovery that if one stood perfectly still, it would not ring. Advice for a paragraph like this: go through, do your star questions, get out. Move on to your next passage because it's going to take forever to find your individual pieces on this one. Afraid of folks, old Miss Tilly said to herself with a smile after she had made the unlikely choice of Sylvia from her daughter's house full of children and was returning to the farm. Well, look at that. We just figured out that her grandma adopted Sylvia and Sylvia had to go live on the farm. Just that one sentence just told us all about what that second paragraph is about. The companions followed the shady wood road, the cow taking slow steps, and the child very fast ones. Well, it looks like this daughter, Sylvia, or granddaughter, whatever she is walking with a cow. And suddenly, this little woods girl is horror-stricken to hear a clear whistle not very far away. Little cliffhanger. So far, you have a decent idea of what's going on in here. You have the exact references. So I want you to go through and answer your star questions right now. See how we do with that. So we got questions 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're doing 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Just start questions. I will never grow up. I will never be a grown up. Not till the day I die. Could still be a kid-ish. What's up? What's up?
How you doing?
This is a barber who only speaks Spanish. Can you call him and ask him if he has any openings today? And if so, what time he could come by?
What is this?
He's in New York City.
But what is it?
He's a barber.
Oh, okay. And you want to know if he has openings today?
Yeah. And what time would be best to come by?
Send me a voice.
I'll send you a voicemail. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Did you conquer these questions?
From Louisiana here.
Okay, so if we take a look at this, we're gonna start with number 3. We're gonna go through. We'll see how we do. Question number 3 is gonna be D. Number 5, A. Number 6, G. Number 7, B. Number 8, G. 8's gonna be your hardest. 5's gonna be your easiest. Others are kind of in between. The hard thing with reading is just, it really is just a matter of repetition. Everything about reading is just repetition, repetition, repetition. The strategy works in terms of, after having done these problems, you feel as though you have a pretty good feel of what this passage is talking about just by doing the star questions. Yeah. It takes a little bit of practice. The difficult thing about any of these sections, be it math, science, reading, or English, is remembering when you get the problems in front of you, what the strategies are. So like, kids they'll do fine in class, they'll do your worksheets, they'll get through your problems, but when it comes time to synthesize on their own, and it's that blank sheet or those questions in front of you that you don't have the guidance, that's gonna be the difficult part, which is why it's so key. I keep coming back to it. I know I've said it a bunch, but like the only way that they're gonna get better is by doing it. Okay, we can move on from there. Pages, I think I split from you guys at this point. My book is at different page numbers, but the pages where they talk about critical thinking and working the answers, probably 404, 405 for you guys, would be my guess. Or the questions and answer, yeah. These are really important to do because it helps you get a really clear picture of exactly what's going on with the questions. And ACT really focuses on its own structure all the time too. 396 or 406, 407 are really good to go through. They talk specifically about how to attack more difficult questions, like the longer questions with the longer passages. The way it's set up is going to be more like the TSI, where you have a more isolated passage and a specific question about that one passage. So we're seeing sections of 10 lines each. That's about what the TSI quizzes you on as well.
Are we gonna look at the two? I mean, I know it's a computer test. Are we gonna see?
We're going to look at our packets. Yeah, we're going to go through that in a little bit. But basically, when it comes to reading, everything on there is going to be the same as here.
Just the, I know we're not talking about this test, but does the SAT also have 4 answer choices?
SAT also has 4 answer choices. In the math section, they have 5 answer choices, just like the ACT does.
On the reading?
On the reading, 4.
So the College Board just complicates children's lives with the AP test.
Yes,
And the big answer choices.
completely.
That's the only test they have a big answer choices.
Yeah.
The AP test.
That and the ACT math test. Yeah, no, their goal is to make it as hard as possible. Which is ridiculous because if you take an intro to history course or an intro to literature course, it is so much easier than AP in high school.
Dual credit is easier than AP.
Yeah. AP is ridiculous. Okay. 417 maybe for you guys?
Humanities.
No, it should be 1.
This page 4 is 7.
The one that I'm on? Yeah, check 407. Yeah, transition. Okay, these ones are super good. These are really important ones. We're gonna go through numbers 1 through 10. Therefore is gonna be a conclusion. These are just signal words that tell you exactly what's gonna come next.
This is good to have anyway, though, because kids struggle with transition. Like on the revising on STAR,
For real.
they struggle with the transition question.
Number 2, moreover, is gonna be an additional point. Furthermore is also an additional point. Thus, conclusion. However is a contradiction, as is, on the other hand. Both of those are contradictions. Number 7 is a conclusion or additional point. Number 8 is an example.
Would you say 6 and 7 is what?
Contradiction. That's fine.
But however, it's
Contradiction.
however, it's contradiction.
Yep, and thus is the conclusion one. And then 7 is a conclusion or additional point. 8, for example, is an example. 9, that's a conclusion or additional point. And nonetheless is a contradiction. So those words really help because it gives you a clue as to what's coming, but it also tells you if you see a paragraph that starts with however or on the other hand when you're reading, bless you, when you're reading your initial sentences, then right there you have your clue. Okay, well, I'm definitely going to have another viewpoint in here. So if they ask about differing viewpoints, I just got to find the however or on the other hand. And then there's approximately 1 million reading drills within here. Now, let's take a look at page 423, maybe? Let's see what it looks like in your book.
Work the passage.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said you need some. You need some? You know, she can't hear without her glasses on. I don't know why she's having to. Wait a second, while she can read. She don't hear without
Yeah, that's what she said.
Well, ladies and gents, that takes me to the end, ladies and gent, that takes me to the end of my preparation for you guys. You've done all the strategies that our students use, our students need. June 13th through 16th, I'm not going to be here. July 11th through 14th, I will be here. Unless there are any specific questions, any specific thoughts about different strategies, that'll do it for me.
Prior to that first week,
Most likely, yeah. I'll probably get an email from Lisa saying, hey, can you put this together for me? So yeah, no, you guys will not be, I will be very surprised if you're responsible for coming up with what's specifically going to be focused on each day. That'll probably be something that I'll do behind the scenes for you guys and then implement on my own when I get in there. But like I said, you're going to have copies where when you're in the math section, it lists out every single thing that you need to worry about. And it tells you what's going on in your other answer choices. So when you go in, It tells you why is this one right or why are these ones wrong. So when you have this in front of you in the math section, do not be daunted because you can definitely do it. If you can read, you can do it.
So for TS5,
Mhm.
we're not gonna be using this material, we're gonna be using something else.
The prep for TSI really focuses. It doesn't teach you any strategies for TSI. TSI really just focuses on the content.
Okay.
Like these review packets, yeah, they're super useful. They show you everything that they're going to be doing. But realistically, it's just examples of the skills that they're going to be testing. These would be good drills, but what's really going to help them is getting them the strategy so that they can use it on the drills like this.
Okay.
So wait, have I done this training before?
No.
TSI.
Yeah, so they might have taken you through this, but they didn't teach you the strategy. They would have just taught you. They would have just gone over what you're going to focus on. Make sure you don't lose your books though. Those will come in handy. And those things, those are like 100 something a piece if you have to buy them your own.
So Antoine, what strategies have you picked up for your ACT?
So, okay, so they're doing 2 days of TSI and 2 days of ACT. What you're saying, they're both the same.
What you're probably gonna end up doing is you're gonna do a day of math, day of English, reading day. I know. But when I was talking to Leachman last time about it, I was like, these strategies are the same, so this is how I'm going to present it in here. So she'll probably mirror that in this setup for the other one, because it really there's no point in focusing specifically on the TSI when both the stuff is covered in there.
So we can message you, but don't expect any.
Don't expect an immediate
Don't
response.
expect it imme- Or if you do, then
Your wife
we'll
gonna
be
take
mad
your
at you.
phone and be like, no, sir.
She gonna make you put your phone down.
Man, if I could, I would just leave it at home. During the summer, I'd leave my phone turned off for days at a time. Yeah. I disappeared.
Technology fast.
This is interesting.
It's hard to do at first, but then once you do it, you're like, holy.
This is March Cop, she 89. That's level 4. You are living. I was fainted. I only visited for about 30 minutes.
Isn't it crazy? Pretty much everybody's addicted to their phone. Most people won't admit it, but you take it away and they're like freaking out. Like, what if I got an email? What if something happened?
That's my thing. It's the anxiety of.
I'm
I
good
know.
without my phone.
I started doing technology fast, so half the time I don't even know what my phone is.
I know, I don't
And I
even.
completely, I went off